All right, guys. I want to thank you for your time today. And again, I'm here to talk about the 5 steps warrior process. I call it the 5 step warrior process. And this is for all car salesmen and business deals. Step, uh, that down there. Okay, 5 step sales warrior deals. Um, sometimes, design like these processes, these deals, these processes that I'm going to be talking about is specifically meant to prevent rookie mistakes and eliminate common objections like price, just look, you need to think type of deals. And a lot of the times this is what you get in a conversation, right? I've been doing this for a long time. I used to call, Auto Trader. I used to call, especially many years ago. I used to call dealerships. We used to speak to these dealerships, and I used to hear them and try to purchase a deal online. And some of these people here was like, selling blind to them. And, a lot of these are selling blind, but they don't know how to react and know how to get the customer excited, right? And listening to these things, it's like, oh wow, what's going on over here, right? And a lot of the rookies, especially that you see, like these sales warriors, they're rookies. These guys are associates. They just started, and they're there to set the expectations earlier, right? Rookies, what they do is, they ask permission, follow the buyer, wait for direction. Even if they have 15 to 20 years, their goal is again to control the frame, right? So control the frame and I'm going to start off with our first tip here: control the frame, right? Control frame, right? And so, so right, control frame. I lost my pen today. Control frame, and that leads to that leads to the interaction, right? Which leads to interaction, right? Right. So that leads to the interaction, and this is the first point, right? Leads to interaction. All right. Remember, our goal as as you sales warriors, right, are to eliminate these common mistakes and objection, especially when you're talking about the just looking and need to think, etc. And this works for all car sales, high ticket sales, and professional service, right? Everybody's got their own way of thinking, everybody's got their own way of doing it, right? But it comes to a point where it's like, you know, are you asking the right questions for the start? Like, can you use rules to dominate the conversation, right? And control that, ask for permission. And this is what rookies do, like follow the buyer, wait for direction. It's like, you're a servant, you're really working in customer service here. That's what rookies do, right? And what the sales warriors do and the professionals, we set the expectation early. And you could tell by the language that these people use, right? Sometimes, like the language that they use is like, okay, let's make this easy, for example. And this is a one-on-one, right? Like, I don't have anybody to mock with, but I've done this enough times to, I've heard it and I've said this enough times, especially when, you're talking to a person or you're talking to a group of people in the room. And you know what? Who knows that their product is better than you, right? The first person I'll ask, it's like, hey, who knows their product better than you, right? And this is the rookie. They should know the product better than you, right? And I want you to answer who knows the product better than you, right? And put that in the chat. Because today I want to discuss together, I want to discuss the following, right? I want to discuss the purpose, right? And especially in a control frame, right? And this is how we start. We'll start with the control framework, right? And we want to set these expectations early. We want to let's make this easy. I'll ask a few questions, show you the right options, and you could decide if this makes sense, right? That relax the buyers, the prospects, and you become the guide. You're in control of the steering wheel, right? You're in control of the you're in control of the class, right? Of the students. And I'll tell you something right now, as a sales warrior professional, you know, you want to be able to control that frame. That leads into a conversation. You don't want to lose your customer right away. And it pisses me off, man. If you can't do this, then you shouldn't be a salesman, right? And sometimes, you're worried about specific things, and those specific things don't interact with actually buying the objection severity, right? And how hard this objection is to overcome, right? And the purpose for this is to help sales warriors and professionals, it doesn't matter who it is, even if you've 20 years, you consider yourself a professional, identify, rate, and respond to these objections with confidence, and obviously show that you have that professional language, right? Um, how hard this objection is to overcome? I usually use a one as easy and five as difficult. Uh, System, right? And I call that the severity, 1 to 5 severity, right? So there's still two, three, four, right? But one being easy, right? And five being difficult, how difficult this is. And I'll show you some examples on the objection. And sometimes I have this chart that I like to use, and I'll show you what the chart looks like, right? And usually my chart, I divide it into 5 squares, right? I have my objection, right? So I have the objection, I have the severity objection, the severity, so the 1 to 5 number. I have what it really means, right? Means, right? Language, weak language, and then sales warrior language, right? So I divide these into five concepts. Just remember to comment the word salesman in the bottom of the comments, or send me a message, and I'll send you over a script uh, with some examples of that and specific language barriers that a lot of these sales warrior languages are these rookie responses that reduce the authority, right? So the hidden concern, usually what it really means is there's a hidden concern behind specific words rather than the weak language that you'd want to avoid. And usually the rookies themselves, these novice people that come in and they're trained, but when they're on call or they're on the phone, their rookie responses usually are responses that reduce the authority of you yourself, right? And basically, from a sales warrior perspective and the way we speak calm, we speak confident, freezing that moves the deal forward, right? So we need to be aware of that. You'll get a lot of it's too expensive, right? And those are some prime examples. You want to eliminate in this step, you want to eliminate the objections through leadership. And especially when we're talking about car sales and high ticket sales. Again, control the frame. Set your expectations early, right? And that leads to interaction. Set your expectations early. Lead with calmliness, or lead as calm as possible, and make sure you're confident in it. Just sort of like how you stand up or you're on the phone and you're confident enough to lead and set those expectations early, right? And then follow that by establishing who's in charge, right? Who's got the authority over the call. Um, right? And I'll throw some examples as to control the frame aspect, right? Even just an introduction, right? You're setting that expectation early. Like you're asking the person, hey, I'm looking for a car. Here's the make, here's the model, here's the name of the car, here's the year, here's how many miles are it, right? And I've done this many times. I've gone to many dealerships. I've done a lot of research. I've done a lot of work, and we, again, I hear it all. I have all the answers to everything, right? And I have all the responses that I get back. And sometimes it's all about transactional action or just that Carfax, that transactional Carfax. And that right there is, you know, not the best, right? And I've seen salesmen with 22-year experience, like 25, 20, 30 years experience do this kind of stuff too, right? Even an auto trader, when you're going from person to person, you're calling people, you find a car, you have your options, your three options, right? And you're calling these people to set up an appointment or to get some information, right? It's ridiculous, right? You're selling blind. Those are the mistakes that a lot of these novice rookies do to the prospect, and their listening skills are horrible, right? And they never want to ask you the right questions. um okay, and all right, so going back to the language aspect of it, right? Like, let's make this easy, right? This is sort of like an introduction. You pick up the phone, ring ring ring, hello, car salesman, XYZ company. uh my name is ABCD, John, Joseph, Jacob, Triple J. And Joseph asks, I'm looking to purchase a car, right? And I have a couple questions for you. And what rookies will do is ask for permission. They'll follow the buyer. Like, even the sales warriors on the other side. It's like, oh, it'll give me 1 second, or which car? Which car? Like, set the expectations early. Like, let me just make this easy. Let me get some questions for you. Blindly, we're talking about, right? Let me get some questions for you, show you the right option, and then you decide if it makes sense, and then call them back, or even just say, hey, like, I'm here to make you relaxed. You become the guide now, right? And you want the prospect to feel relaxed. But these rookies always ask for permission. They follow the deal. They lose the buyer's interest, right? And that, to me, is I don't know if it's just a confidence thing, but you have to be able to know how to control the frame, right? If you know how to control the frame, then you can do it. Number two, actually, let me just give you the 5 steps first, and then we'll give you some examples. Number two, discover the real reason, right? Reason. I lost my pen, and now I need to purchase another one, and it's using the tip of my finger. And you know, this right here, discover the real reason, not just the stated one. You want to uncover an emotion, and you want to uncover a goal. The goal is to uncover emotional and practical drivers, right? What does that mean? Usually, a rookie in sales, like the actual sales representative, will ask surface questions like budget, model, and color. And that, like I said, is the intro. They're selling it blind. What rookies do is ask those surface questions. What sales warriors do is ask why now. For example, what made you start looking today? What problem are you trying to avoid or solve? Right? So the objection there, and in my tone there, and the way we said it was, that objection right there shrunk because the motivation is clear. And I hope that makes sense, because it'll start making sense the further down we go into the steps, right? So control the frame, reason, discover the real reason, uncover those emotions. Number three, I want to talk about the attached, right? And when I say attached, so control the frame, reason, attached, and attached value before the price. So basically, the goal here is to make this logical as possible. And I'll tell you right now, the logical it is, the better it is, and not just an emotional attachment. Like, what rookies do is quote numbers early and don't give them the price. And what sales warriors do, tie features into outcomes. So, for example, how I would show that sales warrior language would be, hey, this matters because you said reliability and safety are non-negotiable, right? So the result of that, right? Price becomes context, becomes a context and not shock. Okay. So you start asking for numbers early, then the sales warrior will try to feature those tie those features to the outcomes, right? And these sales rookies, obviously, they quote numbers early. They'll give you this, they'll give you that, they'll give you this, right? So we want to tie those features, right? So we just want to know the price, right? Get around to the price, right? And that'll make you more better at sales. So don't let anybody else know your business better than you, right? What do you do? Like anyone knows what you do better than you do, right? So do you need to know how a car turns on? No, you're gonna have to. You know this already. So the prospect itself doesn't have to educate you, right? So you know the people knowledge. You know what you're wearing. Smell it. What are you wearing? You gotta smell like you're wearing it. It's called a standard, right? So, you could tell a person to leave or even escort them out. Like these are the types of things that salespeople should already have in concept, right? And right? So rookies will quote those numbers early. That's a big no-no, right? We should be tying features and asking questions, right? Like getting back to a conversation, like, oh, okay, what else? Let me talk to my spouse or wife. Okay, what else, right? It's like, oh, timeliness or price is too high for me. Okay, what else? Like these are some things you can kind of help yourself to get back into the conversation and represent, and you can represent to your next objection or reclose, right? So prospect warrior conversations very straightforward, especially in cars or in any high ticket sales, right? Um, Cars for sure. These are rookie mistakes I've seen. So step number three, so attach, right? Remember, attach value before the price, make the price logical, not emotional. So don't quote numbers early, right? Uh, what we do as sales warriors, right? Our language is to tie the features to outcomes. So remember that this matters because you said reliability and safety are non-negotiable, right? So the price becomes context and not just a shock. So these are some good examples of that. Some other examples of attachment. Um, let's see what we can do. We can say like, price only, you cover the truth basically, right? So if we want to expand that, what's really happening psychologically, buyers don't just reject the price, they reject the risk, right? So what if I'm making the wrong decision? And that's the prospect, right? So when you attach value to a property, the price just becomes a data number, right? The decision becomes more emotional, a logical game, and or your objection disappears or just gets soft, right? So feature, right? And this is a formula that we can use, right? Um, Outcome, personal relevance, flow chart, right? Right, and cost of not acting, right? Right, and this is the flow of that. If you miss any steps, again, price becomes emotional. So start again when you start talking about the attachment value before the price. Price only feels expensive when the value is more like disconnected or just unclear, right? So rookies will always quote those numbers. Professionals will build the meaning first, like I said, right? So, we'll always say you mentioned safety and reliable are non-negotiable. That matters because your family's in the car daily, right? You see how that makes sense now? That's why this option is priced where it is, right? And the result of that, the price feels justified and not really aggressive, right? So the system reduces highway fatigue and a risk of accidents, right? rather than a rookie saying, "Hey, the price is 42,000." Oh, that's the MSRP right there. The sticker shock is more of an emotional resistance of not even buying that. So that's a no-no. Rookies, you know, no, right? When we talk about the three rules before you say the number, you told me, even just before stating the price, you told me that's their words, right? The outcome and the consequence. So three rules. And we're still on number three, by the way, guys. So three rules before you say a number. You told me, right? You told me. This matters because, and number three, if this isn't solved, what does that mean? Before stating a price, you must have already said their words, must have said their outcome, number two. And number three, you must have given them a consequence, right? Only then do you talk numbers. And the high impact of language patterns, right? This matters because you said the reason this option exists is right where most people are getting burnt, where most people get burned is what this prevents is this protects you from, and these phrases lower price resistance automatically, right? So if you can't talk the sales word or language, then you might as well not make enough sales, right? And a lot of the times, for example, hey, I've got a role play here as a car sales example, and the prospect says, okay, so what's the price? The warrior right away will say, "Hey, before I give you the number, let's connect the dots for a second. Pause." You said you talked a little, and this is where you have to focus on the conversation, right? So you said something about safety, or you said something about reliability, and that's non-negotiable, right? So I'm sure again, the sales warrior is very educated. If you don't know your product better than anybody else, then you shouldn't be selling to a prospect, right? Especially with your kids in the car. This package reduces accident risk and any long-term maintenance issues, especially because you have a kid in the car, right? And that's why this option costs more than the base model, right? So remember yesterday and the other day we talked about the best, the better. I mean, yeah, the best, the better, and the the simple, the best, and the better. Sorry, I apologize. That's why this option, simple, better, best option, is more than a base model, and most families choose that. So the investment one on this is 4,200, right? You're giving the prospect a number right there. You're going to get a pause and a silence, right? When the price, and that's just an example, right? And again, you should have that pause and silence, and that'll give them time to kind of say, okay, I understand. And when the price objection still comes, right? As an example, you have a prospect, and then you talk about the price objection, and that still comes the price objection, right? So that's more than what I wanted to spend. And that's your prospect telling you as a salesman. I'm sorry, that's the prospect telling you as a sales warrior, right? And the sales warrior say, that's fair, that's fair. Let me ask you this. And this is the sales warrior, the professional, right? That's fair. Let me ask you this. Is it the number itself, or does it feel high compared to the value we just walked you through? That right there reframes price as a comparison, not just a rejection, right? And continue the conversation out there, right? You could talk about the cost of inaction, right? Like if you choose a cheaper option, you save up front, but you lose, you're still thinking about the family, right? Your family in the back of your seat, where you lose safety and reliability, you said, right? Where that matters even more. And that's a sales warrior. He's educated, right? If you're not educated, then you shouldn't be in sales. Knowing that trade-off, even in an architecture situation or selling those products, for example, we're selling routers and switches. I'm selling a Cisco product, or I'm going through a Palo Alto, right? Yeah, Palo Alto, right? Or if I'm selling a hyperscaler, I'm going through, I have three options. I've got AWS, I've got GCP, Google Cloud, and I've got Azure, right? Right? So know your product, right? Know those trade-offs and what direction feels smarter, right? So as a sales warrior, you know, um, do that and you should be okay. Um, this is again, this is again, we're talking about the attached, right? Um, so the attached value before the price, and this is more of an expansion of that. I've given you three examples, right? And again, these common mistakes to avoid is quoting the price without the concept, talking faster after seeing the price, or just, silence after the price. Give them that pause, especially in that that role play. So, okay, what's the price? The prospect says, okay, what's the price? Sales warrior goes, okay, before I give you the number, let me connect the dots for a second. You said reliability and safety are non-negotiable, right? He's listening to his he knows this already, right? And from a prior conversation, and especially with your kids in the car, reliability and safety. You don't want to kill your kids. You don't want to kill yourself, right? We talk about that. And this package reduces the accident risk and the long-term maintenance issue. So now he's telling you this, right? And the investment on this one is 4,200. Pause. Silence. Let them give you that response back. Prospects ask fewer than price prospects, like, if you know this worked, then the prospect asks fewer price questions. The conversation shifts to options, and the objections become more thoughtful, not emotional, right? So the buyer compares choices and not numbers. Remember that. And if you want me to give you a sales warrior pitch or principle, you could memorize. I'd want you to memorize this, right? In any sales deal, because price is never the problem. It's unattached value, right? That's what the problem is. Um, number four. So number four, right? Let's go. We're done with that. Number four, present three clear options, right? Remember we talked about the other day, we talked about the simple, the better, and the best, right? The goal is to shift from selling to choosing. And what rookies do is push one car on one deal, and what sales warriors do is offer structured choice, right? So it's all in your language. Present three offers, right? Just like three clouds, three offers, three clouds. You offer three clouds to the buyer, they're gonna want three clouds. You're gonna offer three servers, you're gonna give them three servers. You're gonna give them for high availability, for SPOF, for single point of failure, for everything, right? For 99.999% of the high availability, right? And in this case, we're going to be doing sales in cars, right? You as a car salesman. And these rookies always, 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 always make the mistake, right? And again, present three clear options: simple, better, and best. We talked about this, right? I have a video in my YouTube channel. And the goal here is to shift from selling to choosing, right? Get comfortable, shift from selling to choosing. What rookies do, sales rookies, prospects, I just see this all the time. These sales rookies are like pushing one car or one deal. They're forgetting about you know, the connection. They're forgetting about the objection, like they can't overcome that problem, or they have that they're missing those introductions, right? They're missing that make the model of the year. They're the speech, picture, anything that's of a transactional action, right? Or even just a Carfax that's a transaction. And what these sales warriors do is offer structured choice, right? But the rookies push one car in one deal. They forget about the simple, better, and best. And I've heard that so many times. For example, what a sales warrior do in their language, I would say, hey, you have three smart path moves, three smart paths forward, right? Most clients just choose the middle option. And we talked about this in my last video. And if you guys want to see that, it's in my YouTube channel. So most clients choose the middle option because it balances value and protection, right? Right there, fewer price options, faster decision, right? Remember, you're educated. If you're not educated, this isn't for you. Just pack your bags and leave, right? Three offers. And number five, close direction. Don't pressure. Close direction. Don't pressure. I do miss my pen. I'll use my index finger for now. The goal here and choose close with direction. Close with direction. Don't pressure. The goal here is to create momentum. And I hear a lot of people talking about momentum and how, you need to create this momentum. I hear thousands of people do this. And what rookies do is, so what do you think? What sales warriors would do is give next steps. Do you want to move forward today or schedule delivery for tomorrow? Right there, that right there, that result clears outcomes, and you're not really chasing, right? And you're not really chasing. So uh, these aren't cheesy closes. They're more of like leadership statements, like disguised as questions. And sometimes, when we close with direction, you got low pressure, high control. So these remove thinking kind of, or offering clear paths. So, questions like, do you want to move forward today or would tomorrow work better? Would you prefer pickup this week or next? You want the standard option or the upgraded one as we discussed? You're providing an option. Even if that's not three, you're still providing a secondary option. Is it better to finalize this now or after lunch? Depending on the time you call them, it could be 12, it could be 1, right? And why that works is because the decision is when and how, not if, right? For example, in a car sales specific example, if you want to take this home today or schedule delivery for tomorrow, should we start the paperwork here or after a test drive? And that right there provides leadership, and leadership replaces the hesitation in the prospect wanting to buy it, right? Um, you know, honestly, I've trained and I've sailed. Like, I've had problems in the beginning. Discussing with clients and whatnot, and being put in a situation and awkward situations, and it's like, why even bother? I never gave up, right? So have that proper language with you. Learn how to reuse it. Learn how to practice. Cold call. Get somebody out there. I've done this before in the past. We used to do it as like prank calls back in the days, me and a few friends, and this is how we used to practice, right? And sometimes even when you're going and you're buying a car, you're not just going to dealership, you're going to auto trader, you're going to dealer companies, like small little lots, asking questions, getting those answers, right? And kind of seeing where you can go and who gives you those better answers. Because sometimes, you listen to somebody, especially a rookie, and it's like, where did you get your training from? Like, they train you, you go do your ONVIC license, or you get your ONVIC. You need a license, obviously, to sell cars in specific provinces and states and parts of the world. So, based on that, you have to be able to, you can't just sell blind. You can't just listen. Like, that's a rookie mistake right there. You have to kind of ask the questions from the start. And I've heard so many people say this, so many mentors, so many people out there doing the same thing, and ask the right questions, right? And that's uh, amazing, man. Again, but you need to educate yourself. You need to talk. If you're not educated, get out of here. You know what I mean? There's no point. Again, put your comments here down at the bottom, um, and quote the word sales, car sales. If you want some more um, examples, I'll send that out to you in the chat. Just give me and I'll send that over to you by email. There's many out there, like the spouse and the partner. Everybody talks about that soft closes, like let's take the next step or the next logical move, or which kind of feels more natural, not pushy, right? And again, with that, in terms of my last step, I want to talk about what a sales warrior rule for step five is with when we talk about close with direction, not pressure. Closing is not convincing. Closing is guiding, right? If you've done steps 1 through 4 correctly, then step five feels like helping, not selling, right? Um, if you guys want, like I said, when you as a rookie, and I hear this constantly, like, oh, so what do you think? Right? No, based on what matters most to you, you're a professional, you're educated. You've got 20, you got 20 to 30 years experience, you got 40 years experience, you got 10 years. You're a professional, okay? And based on what matters most to you, right? Which option feels right? Based on what matters most to you, which option feels right? Right? And that's a sales warrior. That's a sales warrior, right? And the sales warrior with experience, sorry, right? And then you have your sales warrior rookie, right? And then you have your professional, right? So you have to understand that, if you've done all these correctly, then step five will feel like you're helping, right? And you're not selling, right? You're just customer service. Um, turn the objections right into deals. Try to talk less, get on their frequency, master that art of note taking, and you know, is this a transactional action? Is this a transactional Carfax? Like this is all stuff that car dealerships will tell you. They'll give you a lot of that information and whatnot, right? Even if you're going in with your wife, right? And your partner's involved. When you talk to them, what do you think their main concern will be? These are some things. You're still leading, you're not waiting, right? So if that would help, we brought them into the conversation now, like stuff like that, right? Um, Avoid these quoting prices, apologizing, talking faster than after saying the price, or just offering discounts immediately, right? So silence after the price, confidence, right? Stop, pause. Like I said before, pause after you told them that investment. Um, so when we talk about the rating sheet, the 1 to 5, we talk about objections. We talk about, let's give you an example. Okay, so I'm gonna just pick a number here. So I'm gonna find a severity that I think is uh you know right, and when I talk about the severities, right, you have numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, right, and I typically bundle these two, and I'll tell you why, because it's easy clarification issue, right, whereas 3 is more of like an engagement or a trust gap. 4, you've got the value or priority issue, and then 5, you either scared or there's a decision risk, right, which is sort of leads to fear, right? So bundle these two. And again, remember, objections are not just a rejection, right? For you sales warriors out there, they're requests for clarity and obviously leadership, right? So use calm, strong language, silence, guide this conversation forward, right? So I've created so many rating sheets I can send it over to, but again, I get a lot of objections. Um, right? And when I talk about that, I talk about the severity, like I said in my first presentational slide, what it really means, the weak language to avoid, and sales warrior language. Let's see if I can bring this, and hopefully you guys are able to see this, right? Discover the real reason. We talked about that, right? Tie the features to outcomes, price logic. We talked about the simple, better, best, which is something I've talked to, right? The rule of three, right? And close with the direction. Give clear steps. Avoid weak questions, and create momentum, right? Objections obviously don't kill the D's, as the lack of leadership does, right? Are you a leader? Um, so if we were to do, let me get another page here. Right. Uh, uh, okay, so set the so if I were to stage this into 5 sections, right? I'm just going to draw 5 sections, right? So 5 sections from start to finish, right? And our first objection, obviously, our objection here is it's too expensive, right? Too expensive, too expensive, expensive. Again, sorry, apologize here. Let me see if I can write this here. Expensive, right? You guys kind of get the gist, right? Expensive. Well, let's type it out. Too expensive. Uh, then we talk about severity, right? When we talk about severity, remember I told you about that rule. I told you about the one value engagement or trust gap or just that fear or decisional risk, right? So sometimes you have to understand, like you'll get that objective, like, oh, it's too expensive. Okay, so what's that severity and why is that severity, right? So I typically give that a 4. When we talk about what it really means, when somebody says it's too expensive, the value is not clear yet. Doesn't mean that they don't want to buy it, it's just the value is not clear yet. When we talk about weak language that you want to avoid, right? I can discount it, right? You don't want to say that, right? Instead, what I want you to say as a sales warrior, I want you to say compared to what it solves. How does this investment feel? Question mark. So right there, again, right there, it becomes a value of or priority issue, right? So it's too expensive. Why? Well, the value isn't clear yet. I can discount. Instead of saying that compares to what it solves, how does this investment feel? Right? It's not going to, oh, it's too expensive, right? So now we're now talking about the value, but or priority of the it being too expensive, right? And sometimes, again, remember what I said, the objections aren't just you're rejecting it, right? This objection of too expensive. It means that they're requesting for a leadership of you to get in there and clarity, right? So give them that clarity. So compares to what it solves. How does the investment feel, right? So in that first example of the investment of $4,200, or let's say $90,000, right? You just bought a car was 90,000 or $100,000 car, right? Let's just say you bought $100,000 car. Right? You bought this $100,000 car, you feel great, right? You went into Range Rover, you bought $100,000 car. They put you at like $900 every 2 weeks. Just an auto kid. I'm just joking around. I don't know the numbers yet because I'm not a real car salesman. But once you have those numbers in mind, you can play the numbers game, right? Uh, right, especially as you grow, right? Right? So how does this investment feel, right? So instead of saying, and you're selling them $100,000 car, and right away the customer's gonna say, "Oh, prospect's gonna say too expensive," right? So I rate that a 4. Why? Because the value's not clear, and that's what it really means, right? So what it really means is the value's not clear, right? So let me put the title so that you guys don't get confused here. Let me make this a little bit more sensible. apologize. So this is the objection. And then this is my severity using the 1 to 5 system. And then this is what it really means. You know, and then weak language to avoid. All right. All right. So again, I'm not selling this sheet, but I don't care. Obviously, if this was $1 million product, I'd be, we'd have PowerPoint presentation or even a blackboard or whiteboard, sort of like what I showed you behind the screen here, right? So like my whiteboard cloud on Microsoft board. So just to let you know that this is part of Teams when you purchase the Teams product, right? Um, so you have your whiteboard there digitally. Again, you can purchase the pen that matches the laptop or desktop that you have. Again, I'm using my index finger, but as you can see, I don't care, right? And I've already mentioned my five, right? Um, right. I've mentioned my five here. I've mentioned my choose the color of my pen before I move forward and give you one more example of an objection, right? So, right, I just want to focus on what we talked about earlier so that just in case you guys were sleeping, we talked about control frame, which leads to interaction. We talked about the reason, the attachment, um, right, including the three rules, right? We talked about three offers, right? We talked about it already. And then we talked about the close with direction. And again, you're educated, right? So, rookies, they're educated, but yet they still get confused, right? So I'm gonna give you let's see if I can give you a severity. Let me give you, so I gave you a 4, I'll give you a 5 now. See if I can give you a 5 example. 5 example. So a 5 to me would be we don't have the budget, right? And that to me is a 5, right? So remember what we talked about? Decision risk or fear, right? That's risks them deciding, right? Or fearing that, and or they're questioning you, right? And again, where we don't have the budget, and some people will freeze and like, what do you mean we don't have the budget? What it really means is it's a priority issue, right? Right. And the weak language you want to avoid is we can match the price as a sales rookie, right? It'll say, hey, can we match the price? No, what's most important is price or outcome. And these are some questions that, you know, you should already know and you should already have in the back of your pocket, right? So we don't have we don't have the budget, okay? And that to me is the number 5. Priority issue, weak language, uh, you as a salesman responding to that, I understand. Right? And I've seen this happen before too. I understand. What do you mean I understand? Instead of saying I understand, you've now lost total respect in buying or the customer buying the product, right? So what's going to happen is at this point, you as a sales warrior, right? Uh, right? You're going to talk about, you're going to say this. What happens? What happens if this stays unsolved? Well, what do you mean? Yeah. What happens if this stays unsolved? Question. Right? So we don't have the budget. We know the severity is 5. It's priority, not money. I understand. You're a salesman. I understand. Right? Sales where what happens if this is unsolved, right? So this is the correct instant, right? So now let's build around it. What happens if this stays unsolved? Right there, the instinct right there is the best instinct that you give, and now let's build. Like, what your goal to do here now is to build around that, right? You're educated now. You have that starter point, right? Now, what you're gonna do is not give up. You're gonna say, okay, I understand budget constraints, but let me ask you something. What happens if it stays exactly the same for the next 6 months? Stop on the same frequency. And again, why that works, and we talked about this earlier, is in a level one, you're soft but direct, right? I understand budget constraints. Let me ask you something. What happens if this stays exactly the same for the next 6 months? See how I paused? This right there forces consequence thinking, right? So you're shifting from money to impact. Right there, right? And then when we talk about more priority exposure, right, which is our level two, all right? So from level one to level two, right? If we subcategorize all this, right, we can subcategorize all this, right? Let me get another sheet here. We can subcategorize this into levels, right? Level one, level two, level three, right? And again, you've got your soft by direct, right? And I'll show you a real example. I wish, one to one is there's no middleman there. There's nothing, right? I recommend you cold call and you try this yourself, right? Or call me or call somebody to practice if you want, right? And level two, this is more of exposure, a priority exposure, priority. We talked about priority, right? Exposure, right? And then you have your cost, right? And cost of not acting, no action, or cost of no action or inaction, right? Inaction, right? And and then you also have there's tons of levels out there. Like then you have your level four. I call I can sub break these down even more, right? So for example, you've got your time, right, versus money reframe, right? And these are on the spot, right? So, these are ready to go. And then you have your level five, which is more of your executive warrior level, right? Like we're talking about CEO level, right? So level five, executive warrior level, right? And then we can keep going down and down and down and down, right? Your simple, better, best, then you're clean. Just let me know. There's tons of ways to kind of, you're not going to really memorize these things, but have it an action and plan and how to dissect the conversation and how to keep going if and what, like flow chart it, right? um so paint the picture in your head, right? See if I can draw here. Okay, so right. So remember, level one, soft direct, level two, priority exposure, level three, cost of action, level four, time versus money, and then executive warrior level. And again, we can subcategorize these up to like seven, right? I think I have like seven or eight, but there's more. And I can continue with more at even the same depth, right? But I'm giving you these five right now just in case. And we can add this directly like into a rating sheet if we want. Like we can give the rating sheet, and I can tell you that the rating sheet still remembers this. The rating sheet, um, still the same. So it's still those 5 steps that I gave you, right? That we talked about earlier on. So and then we can kind of role play as managers, role play like turn this into a role play drill, and keep going with it, right? Because the more practice, the better it is, right? I seen guys with 20 years experience, again, 30 years experience, 40 years experience with this high mighty attitude, and it's like, you know, not even just asking the right questions, right? It's so like no willing to work whatsoever, right? And again, we can customize this for car sales specifically, right? Which is what we're kind of doing that right now, right? And if we were to give the objection rating for this kind of level of stuff, um, I would kind of put again keep the rating system the same way, right? From easy to difficult, right? Where your trust is 3, and 1 and 2, I want to put in the same gap. Why? Because so again, I want to keep 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? One, right? 5 being difficult. 1, right? 2, 3, and 4, right? And I want to keep these two together because um And the reason why I want to do that is because 1 and 2 is more like we can use this rating system to educate. We can use it to ask better questions, right? We can reattach the value or just kind of, you know, address fear and risk directly, right? Which is more like the difficult aspect, right? Um, so for example, I don't know if, like I said, the soft direct. Let's say there's a clarification issue, right? That's very easy, right? Based on our chart here, right? On our objection chart, and we know that, our objection here is I don't understand how this works, right? And right there we have that classification issue, that softness, right? Classification, right? Of the car, right? The make, the model, and I don't understand how this works. And what that really means is they need education, not persuasion, right? So right away you lost interest. I'm not even gonna want to buy the car right away, right? And what that means is they need education, not persuasion, right? So they still need to be educated. And right there is, if you're a good sales warrior, right? Good question. Let me walk you through it simply, right? So your key move here is to explain clearly. Don't pressure, don't close yet. Just start, keep going, right? Um, and if we're looking at 2, which is sort of the same thing, so you have your clarification issue, you have your minor hesitation, right? So right there is small uncertainty, low emotional risk, right? Remember I categorized those two, the education, right? So can you send me some more details? Objection, right? So let's do this. Let's do the level 2 priority exposure. Can you send me some details? What does that mean? They're interested, but they're not fully engaged yet. So us as sales warriors, happy to. What part should I focus on so it's useful? Right there, our key move is to guide attention, and that's what sales warriors need to talk about, right? So we're not just sending info blindly, like I told you, right? Um, then we have a rating system, right? We have this rating system, so that's 1 and 2. So I've done that. I've talked about that. Now we're gonna talk about 3. What is it, right? And 3, I kind of put into the trust or engagement gap. Like, what is it? They're cautious but open, right? So an example of an objection would be, "Hey, I'm just looking right now." What does that mean? Right there, you're telling the prospect that, or what that means is the prospect is low trust or early stage or early in the stages of thinking, right? So they don't have their options yet. They just called Auto Trader because that was the first site they went to, and they looked at a bunch of pictures, and they looked at a bunch of information and dealership places and areas, and they just picked out one, right? So when we look at that again, they're low trust, early stage thinking, right? So as a sales warrior, right? Of course, what prompted you to start looking today, right? You don't know anything, right? I'm just looking today. That doesn't mean anything, right? So keep asking questions, build relevance, right? So that's our move there. And that's number three in the rating system, right? So number four, as we're getting to be more difficult, right? So when we start talking about a four, we start talking about value or priority issue, right? So I see the offer, but they aren't convinced or worth it, right? Especially when they're looking at these cars, right? You're looking at three prices, right? You're looking at a car that's, you know, you're looking at a car that's you're second here. All right, so this confusion here. So, you're looking at a car that cost 20 grand versus you're looking at a car that cost 60 grand versus a car that costs 150 grand or 125 grand, right? And right there, you have those three options. You went in, you were cautious, you trusted, you're waiting, you have that engagement gap, right? You're more cautious and open to dealers, right? But you have these three options in mind, and this is where the value of the priority issue is, right? As we get more difficult. So we'll see the offer, right? But they aren't convinced it's worth it yet, right? So the objection that you're going to get usually is it's more than what I want to spend. What that means is the value hasn't been fully attached yet, right? You have your options here, right? They know what they're looking to spend. And as warriors, we're going to say, compared to what it solves, does this still feel high? Right? Right there, you're reconnecting the value to outcomes and don't discount. Don't don't discount. Right? You haven't given them the price either, right? And right there is the rookie mistake is to give that price away right away, right? Um, and that's four, and then we'll go to number five, which is the more difficult option, and that's the fear of the risk or the paralysis. Like you're stuck in making that decision, you're blocked, you're stuck in neutral, and you can't move anywhere, right? So you're in that block, right? And right there is where your resistance becomes emotional, right? And as a buyer, there's high stakes for that buyer, right? So an example is we don't have the budget, right? You given them three options and you don't have the budget, right? You don't have the budget, right? You're looking at, this is the budget. So right there, what that means is there's a fear of making the wrong decision or just misprioritizing the thing, right? And that's what rookie mistake, right? So what we want to do is we want to know what happens if this stays unsolved, right? So address the risk and consequence, and then again, authority. Lead with calm authority, right? So low ratings need information, high ratings need leadership, and I'm going to leave you with that thought. Again, we can role play as many times as we want. We can create some grading rubrics, which I kind of did, that kind of help you, and we can customize that for high ticket sales or just car sales only, right? And I see this a lot in dealerships, right? Like, let me give you an example of car dealerships. Car dealerships online, ways to buy cars, right? So the top five ways to buy cars. Oops, five ways to buy cars, right? You can buy a car by paying cash. You can get a traditional dealership loan. You can use the online marketplaces, like I said, right? The online marketplaces. And those are more like shop, finance, purchase from home with delivery, inspect thoroughly. And then you got your private party sales, or you got your leasing and renting, right? So good option if you don't want long-term commitment or can't afford the full price, right? When leasing and renting. And that offers monthly costs but no ownership, right? Um, key step. right? Budget, pre-approval, and just for any method, right? Your budget, you can afford, or you can consider, or considering all costs, right? So, this is more of a deeper dive, but there's 5 ways of buying it. You can budget, get pre-approved with loans, researching, compare total costs, or just monthly payments, right? So again, know how to talk to the person, right? Sales warriors. And that's everybody, not just me, everybody. Because I see this a lot, even online, right? And you'll always get that, let me get back to you, control grab right there. And right there, the control grab is cost no action in action, right? And that right there is the control grab. So I put that as a number 3, right? And what I want you to do as sales warrior is when you get into that specific situation, not memorize what to say, but have an idea, right? Like, you're gonna have experience, you're already educated, right? And what you're gonna know is what needs to happen before, sorry, what needs to happen before then, right? And these are some good questions to ask. And again, categorize those questions, right? Without giving too much information, right? So again, role play and keep going. I've got tons of objections here that I in a chart. I've given you some ideas. My 1 to 5 Warrior Edition rating scale, right? Um, so again, if you want to know a little bit more, give me send me a message or write in the chat, and we'll talk soon.